Hi, welcome again. In the previous video, we talked of the events that happened after French Revolution. We talked about the type of the government that came after the defeat of Napoleon. We also tried to understand the meaning of conservatism, liberal nationalism, and a revolutionary of that time. In this video, we are focused mainly on revolutionary events that happened between 1830 to 1848. We will read about the July and Greek Revolution and also about the Revolution of Liberals of 1848. So, let us start. We have already studied that Treaty of Vienna in 1815 set up conservative government in Europe and they tried to enhance their power. At the same time, the idea of nationalism and liberalism became fuel for the revolution at the present scenario against the autocratic governments. Thus, revolutions took place in many regions of Europe, such as the Italian and German states, the provinces of the Ottoman Empire, Ireland, and Poland. And who led these revolutions? These revolutions were led by the liberal nationalists belonging to the educated middle-class elite who were professors, school teachers, and members of the commercial middle classes. Duke Metternich once said, "When France sneezes, the rest of Europe catches cold." Let us try to understand this statement. From the very beginning, we are studying that idea of nationalism first emerged in France and from there it spread to other parts of Europe. So, according to Metternich, whenever any revolutionary activity happens in France, it influences the whole Europe. In July 1830, liberal revolutionaries overthrew the Bourbon kings who had been restored to power after Treaty of Vienna in 1815. Liberal revolutionaries installed a constitutional monarchy, means they written a constitution with the monarch at its head. They selected Louis Philippe as monarch. As we have studied earlier, whenever any activity happens in France, it affects other parts of Europe. Thus, this July Revolution influences the people of Belgium to gain independence from the United Kingdom of Netherlands, of which they became part in 1815. Greece got their independence in 1832 from the Ottoman Empire. They had been part of the Ottoman Empire since the 15th century. Greek people started getting inspired by the growth of revolutionary nationalism in Europe, so they started their struggle for independence in 1821. The nationalists, those who were struggling for the independence of Greece, also got support from the other Greek people who were living in exile. The nationalists were also supported by many West Europeans who respected and had sympathies for the very old culture of Greece. Many poets and artists praised Greece through their poems and arts as they believed that Greece represents European civilization. They also started mobilizing public opinion to support its struggle against Ottoman Empire, which is a Muslim empire. One of the finest examples of this is the English poet Lord Byron, who supported the struggle financially by organizing funds and later went to fight in the war, where he died of fever in 1824. Finally, the Treaty of Constantinople of 1832 granted independence to Greece as a nation. The idea of nationalism not only developed through the wars and expansion of territory. As we have already studied, shared culture promotes the idea of nationalism. Thus, culture also played an important role in creating the idea of the nation. Art and poetry, stories and music were used as a tool which shaped nationalist feelings among the people. A new movement known as Romanticism emerged in Europe at this time. Now, what is this Romanticism? Romanticism is a cultural movement which promoted the nationalist sentiment among people through the glorification of past. The poets and artists who followed this were called Romantics. Romantic artists and poets criticized the glorification of religion and science, and instead they focused on the emotions and mystical feelings. They made effort to create a sense of shared collective heritage, a common cultural past, as they viewed this as the basis of the nation. According to Romantics, such as the German philosopher John Gottfried Herder, it was among the common people where true German culture can be found. The true spirit or soul of the nation was popularized through folk songs, folk poetry, and folk dances. So collecting and recording forms of folk culture was essential for nation building process. To recover an ancient national soul and to spread modern nationalist message among the mass people, which were mostly illiterate, vernacular or regional languages and the collection of local folklore was used. For example, nationalist feelings was kept alive through music and language in Poland before it was finally established as independent territory. Language too became a tool in the development of nationalist sentiments. After the Russian invasion of Poland, Russian language was imposed everywhere and the Polish language was forced out of schools. In the year of 1831, an armed rebellion against Russian rule took place but was suppressed. After this, Polish language was used as a weapon by the people of Poland against the Russian rule. Polish was used for prayers and all religious instruction. Russian rule also acted harshly by punishing them for using Polish language. Thus, the use of Polish came to be seen as a symbol of the struggle against Russian dominance. The years of 1830s were a great economic hardship in Europe. Why? Because there was a large increase in the population all over Europe. This also put pressure on the employment opportunities as there were more seekers of jobs than employment. The people migrated from the rural areas to live in the overcrowded slums of the city. Small producers in towns faced a stiff competition from imports of cheap machine-made goods from England. We have already studied industrialization first happened in England, then in other parts of Europe. This was especially seen in the textile production, which was mainly done in homes or small workshops, where machine was used partly. The aristocracy was still prevalent in certain parts of Europe. Thus, the peasants had to pay feudal dues and many obligations, and they were struggling in doing this. Bad harvests were frequent, which led to increase in prices of food. This all resulted in widespread poverty or pauperism. In the year of 1848, there were shortage of food and widespread unemployment. The people were fed up with the government and thus came out on road in Paris. Seeing this uprising, Louis Philippe, who was the head of constitutional monarchy, fled from France and National Assembly declared France a republic. It granted suffrage means right to vote to all adult males above 21 and granted the right to work. To provide employment, national workshops were set up in France. Before this, a revolt of weavers took place in Silesia against contractors who supplied them raw materials and gave them orders for finished textiles. The revolt occurred because contractors drastically reduced their payments. The weavers marched from their homes to the mansion of their contractor demanding higher wages. They smashed the windows of the mansion and its furniture. Also, they plundered supplies of the cloth. The contractor fled from the scene at that time and returned 24 hours later with the army, which ended in killing of 11 weavers. So these revolts of the poor, unemployed and starving peasants and workers in many European countries were happening, and parallel to these revolts of liberal middle class also started. France had already declared itself a republic after the revolt of 1848. In other parts of Europe where independent nation states did not exist, such as Germany, Italy, Poland, the Austro-Hungarian Empire, the men and the women of the liberal middle classes started demanding constitution. They demanded the creation of a nation-state on parliamentary principles such as constitution, freedom of the press, and freedom to form association. In German regions, political associations of middle-class professionals, businessmen, and prosperous artisans came together in the city of Frankfurt and created an all-German National Assembly. On 18th May 1848, elected representatives marched in a festive procession to Frankfurt Parliament convened in the Church of St. Paul. They drafted a constitution for a German nation which made monarchy subject to the parliament. They offered the crown on these terms to the King of Prussia, Friedrich Wilhelm IV. The king rejected this offer and joined other monarchs to oppose the elected assembly. The parliament also lost their social support as it was dominated by the middle classes. They did not listen to the demands of workers and artisans. Ultimately, with the help of troops, the king disbanded the assembly forcefully. During the liberal movement, extending the political rights to the women was a controversial one. Women participated in the movement by forming own political associations, founded newspapers, and taken part in political meetings and demonstrations. But they were denied the right to vote during the elections of the assembly. When the Frankfurt Parliament held, the women were only observers in the visitors' gallery. Conservative forces suppressed the movement of liberals in 1848, but they also realized that they could not restore the monarchy like before the revolution. Thus, they started granting concessions to the liberal nationalist revolutionaries. The autocratic monarchy of Central and Eastern Europe began to introduce the changes such as abolishment of serfdom and bonded labor that had already taken place in Western Europe before 1815. The Habsburg rulers also granted more autonomy to the Hungarians in 1867. That's all in this video. In the upcoming video, we'll talk about the making of Germany, Italy, and Britain nation. We will also cover how the nations were personified by the artists and disaster that happened when nationalism aligned with imperialism. Thanks for watching the video.